Hello, it's Martin from Wisely Automotive, and besides me is this Imperial Blue 120 amp hour BMW i3. If you are subscribed to us, you may have seen it in one of our previous videos. We can leave that linked in the top right hand corner. And we mentioned there that it would feature again. So this is the video you have maybe been waiting for, because we hinted that something will be happening which is potentially interesting to quite a few people. As you probably know from the history of the i3, the previous generation, the 94 amp hour, could be had in the Protonic blue color, which was super popular. It has its own Facebook group, so we thought we would do a special one-off and reuse the Protonic blue panels which we had left over from when we converted Bevy into the unique car we have now. Again, video linked up in the top right hand corner about that. But this time around, based on the many requests, we will go a bit more in depth and we will show you exactly how every single panel of the i3 gets removed. Because if we look on the side here, the i3, as you probably know, has a very unique construction where basically the entire skeleton is carbon fiber and it's just cladded with these plastic panels. So they are fairly easy to remove. And just so if you're interested and you want to follow along at home, this will be done entirely off the ramp, using just basic tools which you can get at any hardware store. Why this car in particular? Well, it has had some signs of wear on it, which we would consider to be too significant to resell it like this. So for example, we've got little scratches on the doors, some dents, and some scrapes on the front wings. And obviously we could just send it to the body shop, but this will be a perfect opportunity to swap the panels over because the Protonic blue ones are absolutely fresh. The other thing is, consider the legal implications, is that technically speaking this is a blue car and we are swapping over to blue panels, so we do not need to declare any change of color on the V5 or anything like that. With that said, I think that's enough waffling. I will pass the microphone over to Arthur, I will go behind the camera and he will show you all the technical bits.
As you've probably seen in snippets of previous videos, the i3 is incredibly easy to sort of undress. In this case, what we'll do is we'll take every panel off first, because who doesn't like to see a naked i3, and then we'll put every panel back on. But in almost every case, putting the panels back on is the same, it's just a reverse of taking them off in the first place. Without further ado, we'll start with the rear wing. However, there's a catch, because to do the rear wing, first we have to take the rear bumper off. So let me show you that. Tools-wise, this is pretty much everything you need. I think I've got everything. If not, I'll go get it in the meantime. All our tools are at the back. But essentially, the main thing you're going to need is an 8mm socket, just like that. I've brought one attached to a driver, to a screwdriver, just to make life a bit faster. But realistically, you could just get away with that. For some of them, it helps to have a little extension. A few Torxes, I can't remember the exact size, but we'll note it when we get to those stages. A screwdriver, pretty much just for one thing. And then this is a pretty specialist tool that you need to take the door handles off. Okay, let's have a look at the rear bumper first. So, this is held on essentially by little 8mm screws. There's two here, one on each side. There's an array of them under the car, and there's a few from the wheel arch liners that you need to undo. And there's one that a lot of people forget, and I just need the screwdriver for that one. And that is one screw just under the number plate. Now, we often get asked, or we see on sort of Facebook, etc., how you take these caps off the number plate screws. And realistically, without a lot of work trying to not damage them, you're going to damage them. So what we suggest, just get a Phillips screwdriver and then just push hard in the middle. It'll find its sort of position and then it will come straight off. Obviously, you're sacrificing that black cover, but trust me, you're probably going to damage it anyway, trying to remove it without damaging. So this is a lot quicker and a lot easier. And then you can either stick your plate on or get new caps, etc. Take one off first. Catch the plate so that it doesn't scratch the bumper. And my apologies, 2 screws. So they're the two that often people forget, and they'll be yanking the bumper off, trying to work out why it's not coming off. We just move on to the 8mm, make sure it's in reverse, and then start unscrewing. Obviously, because I've got a driver, I'll just use that. But you don't really need this, it just saves us a bit of time. So that's those two, and then if I take these off while I've got the driver in my hand, put that there. I'm not really worrying too much about the bumper because this is going to need painting anyway. But that is those 4 screws removed. And I'm going to leave them there for a reason, because they are actually a little bit different to all the others you're going to remove. Okay, now if we move on to all the others, it's probably going to be easiest at this point if I introduce the trolley jack. I'm just going to lift the car a little bit on one side just to help, but on your driveway or in your garage, you can just lie down and you'll get to all these. And Martin's going to overlay a photo now showing exactly where each screw is. So bear with me while I jack the car up. Right, that's up. Obviously, we'd never suggest working on a car under a trolley jack, but we're not taking the wheels off, and I'm only going to be a minute or two. So if you come around, you'll start to see it's like a line of screws. It's just a case of undoing them. Nothing dramatic happens. Right. So that's the first ones, and as you can see, they're a little bit different to the other 4 that I removed first. So when you put them back in, make sure you're using the right one in the right place, because technically they're both 8mm and they've both got a very similar thread on them, but these ones are different. So now that's done, we move our attention over to the wheel arches, where, Martin, if you come around maybe behind me, you'll see we have a screw here, and that one needs to come undone. Obviously, if I had the wheel off, I could do that using the electric driver, but I'll just have to go by hand. Okay. If you guys just wait there, I'll just do the other side. And now I'm going to lower the car again. So usually we would now put some mats down, just because that's where the bumper's going to go down. But conveniently, there's a rear floor mat in here, so we can always improvise a bit. So I'll just put that down there. This bumper's going to the paint shop anyway, so it doesn't matter a huge amount. Now, the rest of the process for taking the bumper off is pretty much just pulling and unplugging all the different connectors for the parking sensors, the lights. If it had a camera, there'd be that, and then there's the 2 lights here. However, what we find a lot is if you just do that sort of without knowing what you're doing, there are some tabs here, and they will break, especially the first one, which I'm going to show you in a moment, and that leads to the rear bumper sort of sagging a bit, and we'll try and find a photo of another car in stock that hasn't been prepared yet where that's evident. It is possible potentially to try and repair that tab and improve that situation. But the way to avoid it is to pry back the wheel arch liner. So Martin, if you just show, like that, and then put your hand in and almost push the tab, and if you just watch here, you'll start to see that first one show itself. And I'm just reaching further in to the second one, and there they are. So there's the first 2. You can just see them revealing. There's a lot of mud, so obviously gloves are probably preferable. And then there's 2 more which are up here, but realistically, with a good pull, those will always pop or free themselves without any kind of assistance. So it's just these 2 lower ones you need to worry about. So they're pretty much loosened, and if I just leave them like that, hopefully they won't pop back in. And now I'll just do the other side. Again, just reaching in, because if you just yank, that tab will break, and then you'll always have a sort of alignment issue in the future when you reassemble it. That's the first one, and that's the second one. So both of those are free. And actually on this side, I'm just going to go further and release those other 2 at the top as well. We're pretty much there. So now it's just a case of pulling, and those top 2 just freed themselves. I hadn't sort of prepared them or eased them out, and the other side you saw was already out. So now just pull a bit further, and it will actually hang quite comfortably just on the different cables. Obviously don't leave it for too long. It's quite useful at this point to have someone assisting you, but you can hold the weight with one hand and then address each of these connectors individually. So what we'll do, we'll start with these. So just press the tab and then pull, press the tab and pull. Parking sensors, so it's just a case of pressing the tab and then forcing it out. That's one, that's the next, that one there, and then the last one, press that tab and just pull. There we go, it's nicely put itself down on that mat, and now it's just the number plate ones left. So if I just bring it up for a second, and this is going to be hard to film, but you'll be able to kind of work it out for yourself. There's just a tooth you have to undo. There we go. Now just because I'm on my own, I'm just going to rehang the bumper just temporarily. Undo that connector, put that aside. Make sure those cables feed through so they don't get caught. And that's your bumper off. Okay, so let's put that to one side. Just a couple of things to note if you're trying to buy a replacement bumper. Obviously watch out that whether you've got a reversing camera, because if you've got one you need to buy one which has the hole for it. And also the style did change slightly, facelift and pre-facelift. And also on S's, there's a bit more of a kind of contour here. So now we'll move our attention onto the wing. The wings are identical left-right, so we're only going to show you this one because, of course, with this one, you've also got the charging flap to consider. So first things first, if we open that up, and if we get a prying tool, firstly, let's just take that off. And we need to take this kind of cover off. Now, there is no elegant way of doing this. It's just a case of prying until you get lucky. Roughly speaking, you're trying to put your tool in here and push backwards on yourself. About 5 minutes later. Oh, manage one side. Now, it's a case of trying to avoid that side catching itself again while you just work the other one free. Ah, there we go. So about 10 minutes later, now you can see what you're up against. And if you break this, don't worry, we broke our first few as well, and we'll overlay the price. It's not too expensive if you do break it. Or you might be taking it off to fit a Wokeby charging cover. So yeah, now you know roughly how to do it. But yeah, there's no easy way to get it off. It's just a case of prying and trying to lift that tab up there until both sides go. I'm going to jack the car back up, and I'm just doing this to get to the remaining 8mm bolts which are holding the wheel arch liner, because the wheel arch liner is held in place to the wing. So yeah, there's no actual need to take the whole liner off. We can just do it this way. So got my 8mm, and actually I'm just going to make use of that extension bar. There's one here. Yep, that's all of them done. So add those to our pile. Just going to lower it again. We're now going to have to get 4 bolts. I believe they're the same 8mm ones as used everywhere else, and they hold the wing in place, but they're very hard to sort of spot. So if I roughly point them out, Martin can come in and show you where they are, but there's 4 of them. There's one here, but it's hidden by the door, but you can't take the door off till you've taken the wing off, unless you want to slightly damage the door. There's one here, and there's one right at the top. If you take the 8mm, same one we've been using for everything else, and put it on a sort of very thin driver like that, that's pretty much the only way I found of doing it. The bottom one's very easy, just out we go. The top one as well is pretty easy. It's just a case of navigating around the side of the door. And the last 2 are the hardest ones, because you have to kind of move the door back while trying to see what's going on, and you get to a certain point and you have to start kind of moving the screw out the way, otherwise it will go into the door. But there we go, that's one out. And now the last one. This one you definitely won't see on camera. There we go. So that's the 4 out the way. The rest of the wing is pretty much just a case of pulling. There are tabs not too dissimilar to the ones on the bumper running along the top. There's no real way to kind of ease them or help them on their way. You just have to yank quite hard, and they will go. We've never broken any. On this side, you've just got to keep an eye on all the connectors for the electrics going to here. So I'm going to close this. We forgot the one screw that we always forget. So it's just here, and the reason it's easy to forget is because it's hidden by the bumper. It's just here, and it's a very easy one to forget to put on before you reassemble. And from memory, I think it's a different style. And that one matches the first 4 that we took off, so it's slightly different to the others. And actually, one of the pitfalls of doing this on the fly, we forgot about these two here as well. So this is the same as the first ones we took off. And as you can see, it's another one of these slightly different ones. And I believe that's because they go into solid plastic, whereas all the other ones go into these kind of, I don't know what you call them actually. Okay, so that's those all off. And now it's just a case of pulling. So give it a bit of assistance, there we go. And it just comes off. Same there. So we're kind of all loose, and it's just being held on those tabs up here at the moment. Worth noting as well, sometimes if your car's had a bit of a knock here, this can be pushed beyond where it should be, and then when you open the rear door, it can sort of catch on this wing. You can adjust that yourself. You just have to undo those 4 screws that you saw me battling with. Just move the wing to kind of the position you want it to be in, or where it should have been before the little nudge, and then retighten them. So to that end, you've got a degree of adjustment there. But anyway, let's remove that. And now I tend to pull from that side. A few more. There we go. So they're the tabs, and that's all there is to it. So we've got a few electrical connectors. So we'll just take this one off. There we go. And give ourselves a bit more room for this one. There we go. So that there is our wing off. There you can see the emergency release. So this is the emergency release for the door, whereas the emergency release, if you look here, for the charging, for the Type 2 charging locking pin is there. You can just see the blue bit there. So that goes here in this cable and comes out there. So let's put that to one side. So next chapter, the rear doors, and by far the easiest of all the panels. It is literally just a case of coming down here and giving it a good firm yank. There's one, there's a few more. Work up along the sides. So just keep going. There we go. And there's just, I think, 2 more at the top. There we go. And there we go. And there we go. So you just have to exercise a bit of strength and just don't be afraid. There's nothing to break. Well, there is actually. It's all these clips here, but they are very much single use. There is no trying to save these. You can see some of them in here. This one's slightly broke on the way out, but like I say, these are pretty much single use. So yeah, that's the rear door. Probably the rarest panel for us to take off. I think the only time we've taken it off in service is to replace this glass. But yeah, anyway, that's one more off. Before I move on to the next panels, these clips, which I've just spoken about, you have to get them out. It's a real pain. We just use pliers, and then once you've kind of got the majority of it out, if you come here, Martin, you'll see in here, there's a little bit left over. So one of the techniques we use is we sort of ram a screwdriver in there just to break it up, and then just put a hoover, a vacuum cleaner, up to it, and it'll suck all those bits out. So yeah, but you need to make sure all of those are clear and empty inside. If you don't, and when you put the new clips on the door, there won't be anywhere for them to go in, so that's important. Also, don't adjust any of these, because they'll adjust sort of how the door sits. So if you don't touch them, we've never had an issue with new panels going on. They're always interchangeable without any kind of sort of issue. However, if you do come across issues, that's how you could adjust them. So each of these sort of twist out. Moving on to the doors. So this is a popular panel to have to remove for many reasons. Door handles, locking mechanisms, mirrors, all sorts of reasons we often have to take this panel off. Now, in an ideal world, you would take the wing off first. But in an ideal world, to take the wing off first, you would take the bumper off first. So it's a lot of work to get that door off properly. So what we're going to do is show you the kind of cheap method for taking this panel off without dealing with those. One thing we would recommend is just putting some tape on the edge of this wing. I'm not going to do it. These panels don't have a sort of end of life for us now. But yeah, if you want to make sure you're not damaging your panel, just put some tape on there, and then you've just got to be careful when popping this one off. It comes off much the same way as that one, but because of the way the door opens, you'll see these two will sort of clash a bit on the way out and also on the way in. So to protect it a bit, just open this door, put some tape along the entire edge, and it gives you a bit of chance of preventing any kind of small damage. But even if it does, it's always minimal. So, door handle. Probably a whole video in its own right in terms of adjusting, and we have a lot of people with issues with these falling out. Often they've been adjusted incorrectly because a lot of people just think it's a case of doing up both the screws, both the adjuster screws, and that's it. That's definitely not it. You have to sort of know exactly what position to leave them in. But anyway, let's start with taking the door handle off first. So if you come around here, there are two kind of grommets. This front one you can pretty much reuse. It comes off with a fingernail. The back one is a little bit tougher. So realistically, we just have spares. So yeah, we would basically just suggest just getting a new one because it's a difficult thing to take off without damaging. So there we go. I guess if you're not fussed, you can reuse it. But for us, we just keep spares. So anyway, that's the two adjuster screws kind of on show. So we have a T20 male Torx driver, and then we have an E4, which is kind of like a female Torx driver, and they go in like that. So first and foremost, we start with this one, and very often we have an issue where on that carrier, that stud gets damaged, and then it basically doesn't do what it's meant to do, and that's when people's door handles start sort of coming out. And it's because people have been going in with pliers, because it's quite a rare tool, especially with a long neck. So anyway, we go in, and we unwind this until we start feeling a bit of resistance on the door handle. So that's probably about enough. So it feels very loose. So that was, what, basically one full turn, maybe just over. And that's it. We don't go any further than that. We can take that out. And now we put the other one in. This is the T20, getting it in the right place. There we go. And we're turning between sort of 3 and 6 turns, somewhere in that region, depending on who's last tightened it. So sort of 1, 2, 3, and we can just start to try and lever it out. Okay, so just keep going and keep applying pressure, and then there we go. Be aware that if you've got, I think, comfort access or any of the upgraded interiors which have the little puddle lights, there will be cables here as well, so you have to deal with those. You have to sort of delicately undo them. But yeah, that's the door handle off. So now we've just got to take this trim off here. So to make life a bit easier, just going to put the window down and then just pull this off like so, and then just keep prying away, and there we go. And just try and go gently because it's quite easy to bend this, and then you'll struggle to get it back in, or there'll be gaps. And there we go, almost there, and then the last bit kind of just sort of pulls out. So that's that free. And now the next step, it's easier to close the door, and it's pretty much a repeat of what we did with the rear door. So we're going to yank quite hard here to break these, like so. There we go. There we go. And now here we get to the point where we need to start being conscious about this wing. So we're just going to keep going. We're pretty much free up here, and we've given ourselves a little bit of leverage sort of upwards, which brings the bottom part of the door here a little bit away from this wing. And if we just keep going, there's another, and there's one more, and there we go. And the whole door kind of slides along the rail at the top, and then it's just a case of lifting it up towards yourself and away. And there's just a little hook here, which is important to get in the right place when you're reassembling. But that's that. So that's the door. Put that down. So far we've done the rear bumper, the rear wing, rear door, front door, and we've just got a car to hand over now. And then when we finish that, we'll get on with the front bumper and the front wing. Okay, so the handover's done, and the more observant of you will notice that I'm wearing different clothes. The car's in a different place. Our floor is looking a lot more tired than it was, and also I've aged about 6 months. Like a lot of things here, we've got a small site and we're constantly on top of each other, and one thing led to another, and this project kind of got put on pause. Anyway, here we are, beginning of 2024, and we're getting back into it. So I think we ended it with the bumper, so that's what we're going to approach first. The reason we're skipping the wing is you need to take the bumper off, or at least loosen it to get to this wing. In any event, first thing to do will be to raise this side of the car. So the trolley jack comes back out. I'll just get it in the right place, and now we've got to take the wheel off this time around. Unlike the rear, we do actually have to completely remove the wheel arch liner. So locking wheel nut, actually I'll leave that open. Right, I've loosened all the lugs, so now I can go all the way up. We can actually get started on taking the wheel arch liner out. Again, a bit like earlier in the video, wouldn't recommend kind of working on a car long term on a trolley jack, but this is going to take a few minutes and then we're going to get the wheel back on, so it should be fairly safe. You can always put some wooden blocks or something under. The reason the wheel arch liner actually has to come out is the wing and the bumper are connected with 3 screws. I've sort of drawn roughly where they are on the underside. The first 2 are easy to get to. They screw in that way. The last one is a little bit awkward. You can't really see what you're doing, so that's why I've just drawn where it is. And that one screws in from the other side, from the bumper side. So that's roughly what you're aiming for. I'm pretty sure they're 8 mils. And as per pretty much the rest of the car, all of these wheel arch liner screws are 8 mils as well. So I'm going to start getting them off. There's 20 something, so there's quite a lot to do. And whenever you think you've done all of them, there's always another one you find. We'll continue with the 8 mils, and these are all screws. That's not one. There's one here. One of these ones at the top actually connects the 2 liners. Unlike the rear, which is one piece, the fronts are 2 pieces. So if, for example, you have a front end impact and only the front line is damaged, you don't have to replace this. But to make it easier to get them both out, it's you might as well kind of disconnect them by undoing this last one here. We've also got, so this wheel arch liner goes round the bottom. So there are 1, 2, 3, 4, which Martin might be able to catch a glimpse of. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Right, so that's all our 8 mil screws, and now we move on to there's a few nuts which use a slightly different system. So in this case, we're removing a nut which is on a stud. So if you come closer, I'll show you where those are. So there's 2 plastic ones. These are 10 mils. So we'll do those first. So there you go. It's like a nylon plastic nut. Another one is here. There we go. Another one. Last one, for whatever reason, is an 8 mil, and it's a metal one, and it's just up here. And I often sort of wonder to myself why not just continue using the 8 mil screws, but after putting these wheel arch liners in and out several times, what you realise is when you're kind of offering it up, the liner almost kind of hooks itself onto those studs and helps you kind of locate it. Otherwise you're constantly sort of fighting gravity. So I think that's why they've done it that way. Why this one's metal though, I don't know. But yeah, that's the last one there. We can now pull the liner out. We can, because we've sort of disconnected them at the top, we can do the rear one first. Okay, so that's the rear one out. No particularly kind of glamorous way of doing it, and a lot of mud and dirt will be caught in that area. So that's the rear half out, and now the front half is much the same. There you go. So I'll put those to one side. The other side is the same. The only one thing that's different is you have a hose, which is the vent or the drain for the 12-volt battery, and it just clips onto, I think, the rear liner. So you just need to unclip it from the liner before you remove it. Now we're going to do these 3 screws here. It's difficult to get the camera in to show you, but if I just light up the area, Martin should hopefully be able to sort of show you that screw there, that one there, and then the third one there really is no hope of kind of showing you, but if you watch where my hand's going, it's kind of here. These are 8mm as well. The first 2, I'll just use the socket on its own. So I tend to do this one first, just because it's the easiest, and who doesn't like getting the easiest thing out of the way? Okay, they look a bit like that, so different to the others, and they've got a narrower washer as well. Once I've done that one, I'm going to attack the difficult one next, the sort of hidden one, which goes the other way. For that one, you need an extension bar roughly that long, so it's the one I've been using for everything else. So with this last one, you're just going in blind. What I find sometimes helps with these kind of scenarios is if you kind of get your hand on it and then remove your hand but get the tool in the area, your brain somehow kind of works out where to go, and there we go, I'm on it. And now it's just a case of undoing it. It's the same length as the first one I did. Designing this, I'd have come up with a better system. Also, very often when we're buying i3s, if this joint isn't sort of spot on, you kind of know that the bumper's been off or something's happened. The last one, just going to remove the extension bar, don't need that. And here we go. So that is all the bolts and screws you're going to have to contend with here. While you're here though, there are 2 things that are worth disconnecting because you'll forget at a later stage. So we've just got to undo this here, which is the indicator connector. It's just a push tab, pretty simple. And then we need to disconnect the temperature sensor, the outside ambient sensor. So again, it's just a push tab. Okay, so that's pretty much everything ready at this end. For your interest, if you have a noise generator or a pedestrian sound option selected on your i3, then this is where it lives. So if you ever need to replace that or service it, that's where it lives. What we'll do now is we'll move on to these screws here. Given the bonnet's open, let's just get these done. So 1, 2, 3, 4. There's also this weird kind of stud which almost just acts like a locator. I find it quite handy when you're putting the bumper back on. It just helps the bumper kind of rest roughly in place while you're kind of dealing with alignment and stuff like that. These 4 are a T30, and not much to it, just like that. Okay, that's those out, and again, because of that stud there, nothing's moving, or you don't have to worry about anything kind of falling. So I'll put those down. And now lastly, I've got an array of 8mm running all the way along the bottom end of the bumper, very similar to the rear bumper. So we'll start here. Actually, we don't have to undo these first 2 because we've disconnected the temperature sensor. Just to make things simple, we will take that off. So this little thing will just fall out. You can take it off with the bumper, or you can take it off first. Right, let's keep going. Okay, so that's all the screws and sort of fixtures removed. So now it's literally just a case of taking the bumper off. Because we've got that stud kind of holding the bumper from falling, the first thing to do is to just kind of loosen this a little bit, like so. There is a sort of tab of sorts just under the headlight, which you have to, well, you don't have to, but it helps to kind of just push it downwards to help you a bit. But other than that, it's just a case of kind of applying force. And if you just come around here, you'll start to see how it's all mounted. So you can see the holes for those 3 screws. And then there's these 2 kind of locator pins, which keep everything sort of aligned and in the right place. I've already undone all this just to not sort of repeat anything. We're gonna now actually lift this over this stud just to give the bumper a bit more movement. And that is hopefully going to help us release that tab. And Martin, if you just come in, you can see it there. I didn't manage for some reason to get my hand around on this side, but it just shows it's not one you have to worry about. You can just sort of pull. But yeah, that kind of shows the importance of that little stud, because as soon as I kind of unhooked that, that's when everything started moving. So really at this stage, it should just be a case of releasing it, and there we go. Usually we would put them down with a lot more care, but in this case, like I said earlier in the video, we don't have much plans for this. Interestingly, if you come in and look here, we can see remnants of a previous repair. There's a bit of dirt in the paint there, and this clear coat hasn't been fully polished, so this car's been painted with the number plate in place, which we see quite often. But yeah, let's have a look to see if there's any suggestions of it having been anything more sinister, and not at all. Everything here is nice and straight, so it would have just been a parking scratch. And given all the several scratches and chips all around the car, which are actually the reason we chose to do this, it's probably been a city car or something like that, and there was a little scratch and they had it seen to. But yeah, all looking good under here, which is a relief. So we'll back on in a moment. Just before we do that though, we do still have to take the wing off, and there are some screws here that we need to deal with. We'll just use the mini ratchet again with the extension bar. This is 8mm, and I think there's 4 of them in total, if you get the mud out of the way. So fourth one is just up here. Okay, so that's all 4 of those out, and what you'll see now is this wing has got some movement. So again, to a certain extent, you can use the position of that screw just to give yourself a tiny bit of assistance with lining this panel up with the door, but to be honest, we've never really been in a situation where we've needed to do that. So yeah, that's all released. On the top, we've got 2 screws here, which are, I believe, the same. So it's these kind of gloss black 8mm. Okay, and just before I forget, I think, yeah, although I got most of the groundwork done on this side, I didn't do those 2. So I'll add them to my little selection of screws for this side. There we go. There's 2 finer ones just here. Again, it's the same type of screw as all the ones we've just been doing. And let's get this wheel back on. So I'm going to lower the car. Everything's nice and safe and out the way. With the front wing, to recap, we've got the 3 screws, which we've already talked about several times. We had those 2 there. We had the line of 4 along the side, and there were 2 here. And then the last thing is removing this kind of corner piece. There's no 2 ways about it. This panel is a nightmare. It often ends up getting broken, and it needs to be removed for any windscreen replacements or anything like that. So often you have people who haven't worked on these before removing them and not knowing exactly what they're doing. So we often find these damaged. We often find pry marks on this edge for reasons you're about to see. And then in terms of how this is kind of fitted to the car, because there's no hardware, there's no screws or anything. It's essentially one kind of push tab here, one here, and then these 3 tabs at the bottom. So yeah, this is not going to go smoothly. It never does. It's a case of finding your own technique. Over the years, we've found that something like this works best. We try and get one of these forks in around the tab and hope that that does the job. I'm going to come back to that in a second because I've just realized I've done things in slightly the wrong order. I'm going to put one of these screws back in just to give the wing a bit of stability while I'm kind of prying here. Just going to do this one as well. There we go, finally. So we've let that first one just release, and it tends to be the hardest one because once that one's undone, the rest of them have a degree of movement. So in with this one. Okay, that's that one done. So Martin, if you just sort of look from underneath, you can see them there and there. And you can start to see why people sort of just put something in and pry, but then you'll get marks along here, and the amount of i3s we've seen which have had that done. What we're doing here is we're trying to kind of get these two forks to kind of get around it and apply upward pressure and not sacrifice that edge. So yeah, that's two. Third one is here. I take what I said about the first one being the hardest one back. I think I might be getting somewhere. There we go. Okay, so that's those three done. And now to stand a chance of not damaging this, if we do damage it, it's one of those things that we kind of almost go into it expecting to. But if you're smart about it, you can sort of reduce the chance of that happening. With the door open, you've got just enough room to kind of get your hand around here, and you want to really give this kind of area here as a little sort of stress, because that's where it's going to snap. So if we get our hands in and just pop, we've managed to do it without breaking it. And then there's one more here. This one's a really kind of big, nasty one. Sounds awful when it goes. We're trying to pull from as close to where that fixture is so that we're reducing the chance of it snapping. There we go. And although it sounds like it broke, it didn't. That's that one there. That's that top one. And then the three tabs. And everything has come out undamaged, and there's no damage to the wing either. And all this was for just one reason, which was that there's a last one of those black 8mm just in there. And obviously you can't get to it without removing that trim piece. So let's get that one off. So just those last two that I put back on to help me remove that panel. I don't know if you've spotted it already, but there's more evidence of respray here. So just up here, we've got all this kind of unpolished clear coat. I don't know if it's coming up on camera, but again, so this wing's been painted. And taking the wing off, once we've done all that, is super simple. It's just a case of pulling it off like that. Obviously with a range extender, there's a tiny bit more complication because you've got the fuel filler, but it's nothing that you won't be able to work out. So yeah, we'll put that down. Let's get this wing off now as well. We do often get asked to do almost like a how-to video for getting to the windscreen and all the kind of common mistakes we find. So if that's something that you're interested in, just make sure to comment and let us know, and we can try and arrange that. It's not that common for us to replace windscreens, but we do several every year, so we can try and tie that in with a video if it's of interest. Anyway, that's the last one, because that's the near side front. That's going here. So that is now a full array of bolts that you need. If I've got everything right, this should now just be a case of pulling off. Yep, nice. We have, I believe, got everything ready on this side. Everything's been released. So actually, let's see how quickly we can undress this side. So to recap, this door, the handle's already been removed, and now it is just a case of giving it some force. Because we don't have the wing in place, we don't have to worry about that edge at all. Although 9 times out of 10 when you're working on this door, you've still got the wing in place. So just remember about that, putting that tape on. Let's just pop the last one. And then the door kind of hangs on that upper rail. Slide it back. Give it a kind of wiggle. And that's that done. The next, rear wing. Now in this case, we have to do that first to get this door off. And let me just see, did I remember about the last screw? Yes, I have. I've taken that off. Ah, okay, I've missed one. So let me just get an 8mm. I wonder what me 6 months ago was thinking, only releasing 3 of them. But anyway, 4th one comes out. There we go. So back to where we were. Nice and loose. There we go. No tabs broken or anything like that. Then last remaining panel, this one here. So that's every panel, or every body colour panel removed off an i3. Actually, I lie. There are 2 left, which we're not going to do in this video, but it's these little trim pieces here. They're not the easiest thing to get out. There is a, if you've been watching this video hoping that we're going to get to an explanation of how to remove them, all I can say is there's a little, almost like a single-use rivet, like a plastic rivet here, which you're best off basically just drilling out. You can somehow get it out so that you can use it again, but it's an odd design, and I don't know why they use that. But other than that, it's just tabs, and it pulls off. I always think they look really cool like this, and I would love to one day find someone who can make clear panels. I'm sure it would cost a ton, but how cool would that look? If anyone's watching and knows someone who could do that, please let them know and get in touch, because I think that would be super cool. That just about concludes removing all the panels. In terms of putting them back on, as I said earlier at the beginning of the video, it's pretty much just a reverse of what you've watched. There's just a few small things to remind you or to mention just while they come to mind. As a reminder, do make sure to completely remove all these door clips, and also hoover out the remnants. Otherwise, when you offer up and try and snap in the new one, there's physically no room for it to go, or if it is in, it's not in all the way, and then the door sort of starts coming away, the skin will start coming away over time. So yeah, make sure that's all definitely out. We'll put the part number for this clip down here, because it's pretty universal across all i3s. And then one other thing that just comes to mind, and something we started noticing in the last few months, especially on older i3s where maybe in the past they've had the bumper off and put back on. This wiring loom here, in particular where it drops down to the parking sensors, what happens is where the rear bumper sits, it has like almost passageways for these cables, and we're starting to find that when a bumper's been removed, they've kind of just been put on willy-nilly, and there's sort of chafage happening here, and it's called, in fact, look at that. That's literally not planned, but you can see that break just there. So that's exactly what I mean. So just be logical about where you're routing the cables before you put the bumper back on, or almost create some kind of physical passageway and something to protect that cable, because otherwise you're going to be ending up having to repair cables like we're going to just there. The others look all okay, but yeah, given how many panels on this car have been painted, I'm not surprised to see that. On the topic of parking sensors, this car just has reversing sensors. It doesn't have the park package, so it didn't have front sensors. If your car does have front sensors, just keep in mind when you're removing the front bumper, there's a little bit of extra work. You've got to unclip those connectors. And also, when you're putting the bumper back on, do make sure you've connected everything, because the last thing you want is to have everything back in place and then turn the car on and realize you've left one connector unplugged. It happens a lot. Now that we've got the car completely naked like this, and you've seen just how dirty and muddy it is, we're going to take the opportunity to give it a really deep clean. Even though no one's going to see these areas, it's going to be a pretty special car once the Protonic Blue panels are on, so we might as well do that while we have the opportunity. And in the next video, we'll show you how everything comes back together and the final result. That's it for now. Thank you very much for watching. If you have found it useful and you want to see more i3 content, please do consider subscribing by clicking down here. It really spurs us on to do more of these videos. And also, as we've referenced it quite a lot in this video, if you click up here, you can see our very first YouTube video, which shows Bevy having its Protonic Blue panels taken off, which are the ones that are going to go on this car some 3-4 years later. Thank you very much, and see you in the next one.